it's Marley from the Energy Boutique with your energy forecast for Friday, October 14th. So we have the moon in Gemini all day. We definitely have a better vibe to the day. Yesterday, of course, this Gemini energy was kind of muted, kind of stunted with Mercury, the ruler over this Gemini energy, making some very awkward aspects to both Uranus and to Saturn. So it definitely wasn't the light-hearted, light-vibed, communicative, social type of energy that we usually get with the moon in Gemini. So today should be a much fresher type of energy, a much lighter type of energy, not as much, I'm going to say, mental pressure as yesterday, and definitely putting ourselves out there in a different kind of way. Now, there are 10 different aspects here today, and 9 of them involve the moon. So Venus, who is in her place of power in this Libran energy, is trining, which is a beautiful, beautiful aspect, with Saturn. Saturn, of course, the lord of karma, ruling over roles and responsibilities. So here's the thing. Venus being in Libran energy, of course, we're hella confused. We're indecisive. Relationship dynamics are changing. We're really not sure what it is that we need to feel safe and secure and stable and supported in our relationships or within ourselves for that matter. We have had a ton of changes within our own wants, needs, and desires, especially when it comes to what it is we want to do with ourselves, money matters, relationships, throwing ourselves into hobbies and situations that actually bring us a sense of joy. And being in Libran energy, like I had mentioned earlier in these forecasts, everybody thinks that Venus being in her place of power in Libran energy is just, lovey and romantic and happy and playful. And yeah, that's the goal, but we have to kind of wade through the darkness in order to figure out what that actually means for us in order for us to actually arrive at that point, what it is that we're lacking, what it is that we want, what it is that we need, what it is we desire. So this little interaction here today between Venus and Saturn, it is the only aspect taking place here today outside of the moon's aspects with other planets. This energy brings us back down to earth. Okay, so we've been floating off into la la land. We've been overwhelmed with thoughts, overwhelmed with emotions. There's been a lot of chaos, especially since this very deep and intense transformative weekend that we just came out of with Pluto going direct, with the full moon in Aries, with Mercury re-entering into Libran energy. We're now in the time and the space where we are building towards the eclipse season, which is going to help us sort things out. But today, Venus and Saturn are really kind of bringing us down, bringing us back down to earth. We're getting a little bit of a reality check here on what it is that we're lacking, what it is that we actually want, what it is that we're willing to fight for. It's like we're able to sort out our feelings, and we're taking a very mature and responsible type of position with some of the roles and responsibilities that we essentially are being pushed into because we are into new karmic contracts here. The existential dread that many of us have felt in having to kind of boss up and move forward and accept some of these changes for what it is that they are, that's kind of passing. There's not really this negative energy that comes with it. Now, granted, yesterday, we ended the day off in a very negative mindset. We were really picking ourselves down and criticizing ourselves and zooming in on all the things that we've done wrong and our fears and our doubts and our insecurities. And then here today, like I had mentioned in yesterday's forecast, we almost need to give ourselves permission to sit in that darkness and beat ourselves up, because then we learn how to drag our ass out of this dark hole. And in doing so, we realize a lot when we're down in that dark space. And those realizations on what it is that we need to do for ourselves to heal some of the voids, heal some of the wounds that we expect other people to heal within us. Like, we have to boss up and do what we can for ourselves to provide ourselves with safety and security and stability that we're constantly looking outside of ourselves for. And it's almost like we are formulating a plan. We are able to see our feelings as they are and not this like over exaggerated, skewed perception that we've been in since the weekend. And yeah, it's like we're taking a very mature perspective, mature attitude with accepting some of the situations as they are, even though we might not like them, and even though they still may be very unfair or unjust. There's an acceptance level that we're kind of reaching, and we're bossing up to really having to take power and control over our lives to make things right. But it's not coming with, the weighted fear, the weighted dread that we may have had over these last couple of weeks, in knowing the changes that we've been facing and knowing what it's going to require of us in order to actually make these changes and align to a new path, a new purpose, if you will. Again, our landscapes are rapidly changing in our reality, and it's been a hard pill to swallow for many of us. And there's just this level of acceptance that's coming over us at this particular point. Doesn't mean that, we wouldn't want to change things. Just means that it is what it is. Here's the hand that we've been dealt. I'm going to do the best that I can to clean up this mess. I'm going to do the best that I can to make something positive out of something negative, and I'm not going to cry or complain about it. That's kind of where it is that we're at. Now, the moon is going to bump into Jupiter. Jupiter is about growth and expansion, about beliefs and abundance. And he is retrograde in Aries energy, in the very beginning degrees of Aries energy, again, preparing to go retrograde and creep back into Pisces energy here at the end of the month. If you haven't listened to October's energy forecast, go ahead and kind of review what it is that we're about to move into. This particular week and the majority of next week are semi-calm with astrological events because, like I said, we're in the tunnel. We're in the whirlwind tunnel of being sucked into eclipse season. And we have a lot going on here from the 23rd on of this month. So you really should be well versed in what it is to expect as we move through the remainder of October. And if you haven't listened to your zodiac forecast, you probably should, because it's going to let you know where it is that you can expect these energy shifts to be kind of taking control and altering certain areas of your life. Anyways, the moon is interacting with Jupiter. And Jupiter is opening us up to seeing where it is that, we are taking on a brand new identity. We have to. We've had certain things happen to us that will forever change who it is that we were, who it is that we currently are, and who it is that we will forever be. And, we're kind of, with the moon in Gemini, we're very curious. We're processing things at a very high speed in our mental plane and in our heart space. And there's just kind of this acceptance, if you will, of looking at the situations and the circumstances that have been popping off in our lives as a life lesson, as a spiritual tool for growth and improvement. And essentially, it's teaching us a lot about who it is that we actually are, our strength, our perseverance, our resiliency, if you will. That's all part and parcel of really changing and transforming the beliefs that we have within ourselves and the beliefs that we have in the universe, what is actually possible for us. And it is illuminating for us what it is that we kind of need to rework and redo in our lives. Of course, we are in a cleaning period. We're still trying to kind of clean up the mess of the past, some loose ends of the past, before we go ahead and start building new elements into our lives and reality. But this is just, I'm going to say, a more positive mind frame, more optimistic mind frame. We're building our confidence. We're building ourselves up, especially out of the black hole that we just found ourselves in yesterday. And we're just we're trying to see the best side of things. Even in horrible situations, there's always silver linings. And this particular energy is just illuminating what those silver linings actually are for us. The moon will be bumping into the true note in such a way where there's likely going to be a situation in our exterior realm to remind us of where it is that plans just aren't going according to plan. We've had some huge disruptions in our lives that have basically put the kibosh on some of the long-term dreams and visions that we have been working on. And we're really having to kind of take a step back when certain elements and aspects kind of show up in our physical realm to remind us, like, wow, we kind of have to hit the drawing board here and start over. And B, showing us where it is that, you know what, we don't feel like we're on the right path anymore because of some of the disruptions that have happened to us. We really have to reconsider whether some of those dreams and visions that, you know, are being changed and altered, whether we're even passionate about them or not. And this isn't meant to be, you know, a down in the dumps type of funk, but it is kind of giving us an opportunity to choose a different path if we wish. And again, may I remind you, there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. We just came out of Mercury being retrograde. He's still not up to full speed. He will be on the 17th. But we are seeing things differently, and we're having to react in different ways, and we're having to deal with situations that we weren't expecting to be in. And it is a time of, I'm going to say, reconciliation, of revision, of re-editing. Those are all very much retrograde words. But keep in mind, we had Pluto and Mercury come out of a retrograde, and we still have some very significant aspects and planets in a retrograde. And we're really still having to retrace our steps and revise our plans. So this particular aspect with the true node is just trying to kind of get us to take a look at the options and the opportunities available for us to change our minds, to change our path, to change our direction. The moon will be sextiling Chiron. Now, Chiron is the wounded healer, and Chiron had a major, very major and significant part over this past weekend's full moon event. And a sextile is a good energy. It means that we are kind of seeing the changes take place in our emotional realm, in our mental realm. We are really, really needing to take a step back and kind of celebrate ourselves in what it is that we've been able to handle, what it is that we've been able to heal, what it is that we've been able to go through and grow through. Chiron, of course, being the wounded healer, does illuminate where it is that the wounds are still alive and well within us, but also shows us where it is that we have such power and control and strength and perseverance and resiliency in order to actually heal those particular wounds. So this is almost like, I'm going to say, a weight being lifted off of our chest, our heart space, where we're able to breathe a little bit better. This is also a major weight being lifted off of our mental plane, where it is that we're able to kind of, I'm going to say, process the situations, the circumstances in a different way that would push us more into being positive and optimistic about the outcome that we're currently trying to manifest versus the negative internalized criticism and narrative that we sat in the funk with here yesterday. The moon does bump into Uranus in such a way that we may see a total disruption to our plans. Maybe, some information comes out of the blue. Maybe we are asked to show up or be somewheres that we weren't planning on being. There is an element of a wild card energy when it comes to Uranus energy, because it is the great awakener. It likes to shake us up, likes to, add a little bit of the element of spontaneity into our lives. And many of us, because we're all control freaks, kind of cringe, when new things come to light and when, plans don't go according to plan and when our routines are disrupted, not realizing that that's the universe's way of providing us with a little bit of a detour that will either save us from a certain situation that we would have entered had that detour not arrived, or given us an opportunity to be in a different place, to meet different people, to have a different perception or realization or understanding by kind of deviating from the normal routine. So I'm going to say that this element does create a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of anxiety, but that's only because we're creatures of comfort and we don't really like to be derailed. We don't really like to have surprises show up. We don't really like to expect the unexpected. And that's very much kind of the kit and caboodle that we have to expect when Uranus is at play. And, the Gemini energy is an air energy. Uranus kind of rules over the higher level intellect, where the Gemini energy rules over the lower level intellect. So there is a lot of anxiety or restlessness or anticipation, a lot of central nervous system activations with this particular energy. Now, the moon is going to go ahead and trine Saturn. This is beautiful. We really, really enjoy this because Saturn, although he is the Lord of Karma, and although he does have a bad rap, I know he likes to deal out the tough love life lessons, and he likes to push us into, new roles and responsibilities in life. But he does so because he wants us to be our best selves and to stand in our truest, greatest power. Now, Saturn is retrograde in Aquarian energy, and his whole, vibe, his whole lesson here is showing us where it is that we have to create better boundaries in our lives in order to make sure that we're not giving too much of our own energy, time, and effort away and not reserving enough for ourselves. He's also showing us where it is that we have to kind of rebuild or restructure how it is that we show up for other people and fail to show up for ourselves. Because, of course, many of us are just, too people pleasing. We're in Libra season. That's the downfall of those characteristics coming out, showing us how much power they actually have to dictate our actions and behaviors out in the world. But Saturn is supposed to be showing us where, in a reflective mode, because he is still retrograde, where in the past had we had better boundaries, had we advocated for ourselves, had we been a little bit stronger and applied some tough love to the people in our lives, where maybe we wouldn't have gotten ourselves in some situations that, hindsight, we had no business being in. The moon interacting with Saturn in this way does kind of help us emotionally regulate ourselves a little bit better than what it is that we have been doing, especially with the intensity of this past weekend. And it's not that we're numbed out. It's not that we don't feel. It's just that we're taking a more realistic and practical approach to the situations that have popped off and kind of accepting them for what it is that they are. My favorite saying is, it is what it is. And, that's very much a Saturn saying, I would say. Because you know what, you can't change the past, and you can't change the fact that we're here to kind of go through pain and suffering in order for us to find our truest light. And a lot of the tough love life situations that have been thrown at us have been, absolutely heartbreaking, absolutely soul sucking, but we are the light. We do have the tools, the resources in order to deal with these deeper, darker topics in life. And we do have the ability to make something good out of even the worst situations. So the moon interacting with Saturn in this way does kind of help us sort things out in our mental plane, in our heart space, help us get a little bit down to earth, a little bit organized, really put us in a position on what the next logical and practical move should be in order for us to start kind of positioning ourselves, to start rebuilding the landscape that kind of got disrupted and disoriented over the past, I want to say a couple of weeks, but realistically, it's been a lot longer than that. This is just helping us to take a little bit more of a grounded approach and to be a little bit more raw and authentic with our feelings instead of the over elated, over dramatized situations that we've been in because of Jupiter's role in all of this, especially going back to the weekend where the full moon in Aries was involved. Shortly after, we have the moon trining Venus, which is a beautiful energy because it means that we are bossing ourselves up a little bit. We're picking ourselves up. We're drying ourselves off. We are trying to take care of ourselves. We're trying to nurture ourselves back to a place of safety and security and stability. Yes, we are identifying what it is that we need in our lives, that we can provide ourselves, but we're also realizing what it is that we need from those that we share our lives with. And of course, Venus being in her place of power in Libran energy is very focused on, finding peace and finding harmony, especially within our relationships, and being happy and being able to enjoy the little things and aligning with happiness and pleasure and joy. And again, being in Libra season, we tend to, really live in the extremes of these qualities and characteristics in order to actually arrive at balance, at peace, and at harmony. So emotionally speaking, we're actually feeling a little bit more on common ground, more connected, more in alignment with the people that we actually care about. If you'll remember here yesterday, we were kind of struggling because there's this want, need, and desire to feel that connection, to feel closeness, but also we didn't really want people that close to us. We wanted a little bit of space. We wanted independence. We were very confused in our emotions. Well, now we're piecing things together. And a lot of this is because of Saturn bringing us back down to earth here today and helping us to logically and practically sort out our circumstances, our thoughts, and of course, our emotions. What's beautiful is that the moon is going to go ahead and make a beautiful interaction with Pluto. Pluto is now direct. He's still not moving forward as fast as he normally would, because again, he's a very slow moving planet. He just came out of a retrograde. He's kind of standing still at this particular point. And that's why many of us, although things are rapidly changing around us, it feels like we're at a standstill. We will see a lot of action, I would say, take place, especially when we head in closer to this eclipse energy. But right now, this is, I'm going to say this is a time and an opportunity for us to become a little bit more safe and secure and supported and grounded and stable in our emotions and in our mental plane. Now, Pluto is the great transformer. It is about death and rebirth and renewal. And many of us are going through a death of self, a death of relationships, a death of losing people to death, right? Like there's a lot of things ending. There's a lot of closures happening here. And that is directly impacting who it is that we now are and who it is that we will be moving on to the future. What this particular energy is doing is kind of taking that pain and showing us where it is that we can use that as a source of motivation, inspiration, and power to push us through to the next, chapter, the next section of our lives. And Pluto wants us to boss up and really take control and to step into this new level of authority within ourselves. And he also, kind of throws us into the realm of our psyche, because our psyche is the way, it almost dictates the way that we feel about certain circumstances and events in our lives. The minute that you can reframe a certain situation into the most positive silver lining of the situation available, that's how we shift our emotions. And the minute that there's this inner transformation that takes place within us is the minute that we are kind of preparing our physical body to engage with the exterior realm of our reality, to go ahead and start moving the pieces of our lives around to mirror back to us what it is that we feel good about, what it is that we feel strongly about, what it is we feel aligned to kind of pursue within ourselves. So our inner realm truly does dictate what it is that our outer realm is going to look like. But right now we just need to get our heart and our head on the same page before we actively engage in making some major moves in our exterior realm. Pluto is about transformation, but the transformation starts within before we're going to see it outside of ourselves. The moon trines the sun. Anytime that we have the moon and the sun interacting, it's almost like we're being torn in two. The moon is our emotions, our intuition, our unconscious self, very connected to the past. The sun is our life force energy, shining a bright light on what it is that we want to achieve. Of course, the moon in Gemini, we're mentally processing a lot of things in the past that, we were cluster F trying to process that really didn't make much sense. We are gaining a lot more clarity, a lot more perspective, a lot more understanding and answers to piece together and try to formulate coming to terms with some of the situations of our past. While the sun, of course, is in Libran energy, shining a bright light on what it is that we have to do in order to find stability, to find balance, to reconcile particular relationships, to come to terms and make peace with certain circumstances, and to just find happiness again. And even if that means going back to the bare basics of just, the very small details in our lives that bring a smile to our face, then that's what we got to do. But the sun is shining a light on what it is that we have to do, what it is we have to pour our time, energy, and attention into. The moon is showing us what it is that we kind of have to formulate a plan and make peace with within ourselves before we can go ahead and start something new. And what we're left with is this present moment where we get to kind of see the divide within us, within our lives. We get to see, the past. We get to see the future that we would like. And in this present moment, we are left with a choice point on what it is that we actually have control over in the here and now to tie up the loose ends of the past, to reconcile some aspects of the past, to make peace with some situations and circumstances of the past, to free us up in the here and now, to start pouring our time and our energy into doing what it is that we have to do to achieve certain goals that the sun in Libra is shining a bright light on. So it is this like tug of war type of thing, but this is a trine. So this is a good energy, which means that there is going to be some kind of epiphany, some kind of aha moment that's going to bridge the gap from where it is that we've been to where it is that we desire to be. Lastly, we do have the moon squaring, which is getting into the boxing ring. This is about the toughest aspect that we have here today, so we're not going to complain about it, seeing as most of the days there are more negative aspects, more tension, more conflict than there is good. We're not going to complain about it. We understand at this point that the tension-filled, conflicting aspects are divinely scripted in order for us to learn a little bit more about ourselves and what needs to change first and foremost. So we're not going to sweat this too much. But what I will say is the moon getting into the boxing ring and squaring off with Neptune, who is retrograde in Pisces in its place of power. This is a lot of emotion. This is a lot of mental processing, so much so that we might tap into the shadow elements of Neptune being in Pisces, which is escapism, which is wanting to numb, wanting to disassociate, wanting to just bury our head in the sand and curl up in a ball. We're not very good at this particular aspect with aligning with our higher self, our egoic self, our mental plane, because of the Gemini energy. It is the lower level intellect. Our ego kind of has more control right now than our higher self does. And we've been doing so much mental and emotional processing, trying to clean up the mess of the past, trying to clean up those loose ends that, we might just find ourselves in a state of burnout. We might be having a hard time tapping into our higher self, tapping into our intuition. We may have a hard time visualizing what our dream and vision now is, that we've had some, wrenches thrown into our plans. It isn't going to be the best energy for us, to be honest with you. And where it's happening at the end of the day, when most of us are preparing to go into a dream state, what I will say is Neptune being the ruler of dreams, we may just have either some really tough dream topics thrown at us that will illuminate for us, subconsciously what it is that we're struggling with in our waking lives, or we may have some dreamscapes that will reveal some solutions, reveal some answers to us. Of course, I'm hoping that we all get to experience the latter part, but there's a lot to be said for nightmares and for just disturbing dream content as well, because that's a good indication on what it is that our conscious self is repressing in our waking lives and what our subconscious needs to work through while we're asleep. So that's how we're going to wrap the day up. It's not a horrible day. Like I said, we have a lot of very positive things happening to us. That is about the most negative aspect that we have there today. And it just kind of amplifies where it is that we feel overwhelmed, where we feel like it's too much, where we're having a hard time visualizing the future, and where it is that our ego kind of gets in the way and takes control. So just have the heads up. Just know that we're going to have the bulk of the day kind of free flowing, and then it may get tougher as we head to bed.